I now recognize Mr. Magaziner, the gentleman from Rhode Island, and the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Law Enforcement and Intelligence for his 5 minutes questions.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Our country faces a range of security threats, from foreign terrorist organizations, domestic extremists, cartels, organized crime, and natural disasters, just to name a few. And while you have been diligently doing your job, along with your colleagues at the Department, to protect the American people in the face of these challenges, our Republican colleagues in the House have instead been playing politics, culminating with a political impeachment that had no legal basis. I am sorry that some of our colleagues have chosen to make you the target of political attacks instead of getting you the tools that you need to do your job to keep people safe. And I want you to know that many of us are still willing to put politics aside and work with you and work with each other on a bipartisan basis to protect the homeland. The President's fiscal year 2025 budget requests $62 billion for the Department, including hundreds of millions more for staffing and technology to secure the southern border. It also proposes $4.7 billion for a Southwest Border Contingency Fund to provide resources to the Department when migration along the southwest border warrants additional capacity. This is the right thing to do, and I hope that our Republican colleagues will support this funding, unlike last year, when they delayed action on the President's supplemental funding request for the border for months while they wasted time with impeachment. It is inexcusable that our Republican colleagues did not pass the final fiscal 24 funding for the Department for nearly 6 months, forcing the Department to work under multiple CRs, reducing operations and overstraining the workforce of the Department, and I hope that fiscal 25 will be different. Funding the Department of Homeland Security is also critical because our nation faces an increased threat from the rise of domestic violent extremists. Now, we heard from you, Mr. Secretary, and from FBI Director Wray last November during the Worldwide Threats hearing that the top domestic terrorism threat we face continues to be from racially and ethnically motivated and anti-government motivated violent extremists. Some of these are organized groups, like the group that engaged in the plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan, and some of the groups who stormed the Capitol on January 6th in a violent attempt to overturn a legal and lawful election. Others are lone actors, like the individual who attacked Paul Pelosi. And many of these individuals are shamefully inspired by and scapegoated by members of this Congress and by former President Trump. But the Government Accountability Office has shown that domestic terrorism-related cases has increased dramatically in recent years. So with this alarming fact in mind, I would like to turn to you, Mr. Secretary. Can you tell us, what is the Department of Homeland Security seeing with respect to the threat from domestic violent extremists, particularly as we grow closer to the election, and what steps are the Department taking to address any potential threats to government bodies, officials, and the public at large?
Congressman, we are, as Director Wray and I have expressed previously, in a heightened threat environment. Indeed, individuals drawn to violence because of ideologies of hate, false narratives, anti-government sentiments are a significant concern of ours. We do a number of things. We disseminate information and analysis to state, local, tribal, territorial law enforcement and other officials. We distribute grant funds. We are grateful for Congress's support of those grant funds. We need those funds to increase to enable local communities to protect and guard themselves. As I mentioned in my opening statement, we have a very important targeted violence and terrorism prevention grant program that enables communities to employ best practices in the identification of an individual who may be drawing to violence and intervene before a tragedy occurs. Those are some examples.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Secretary, for that, and particularly the support of state and local law enforcement agencies. As we saw on January 6th, it is often law enforcement in uniform who are on the receiving end of these assaults and this violence, and we need to do everything we can to support them. against this threat. So I thank you very much, and I'm out of time, so I'll yield back.
Gentlemen,